Hello and welcome to Northwest Knitting. My name is Kathy and this is my knitting podcast where I talk about the clothes I'm knitting for myself, trying to make a sustainable wardrobe and also have clothes that fit me because that's one thing that's very hard to do when I go to a ready-made store. I'm looking for clothing that is using natural fibers as much as possible, with exceptions for kids' clothes and using up the yarn in my wool pantry and so forth. I'm in transition, but that is my goal. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Northwest Knitting, and everything I talk about today will be in the show notes below if you just press the down arrow and show more. Welcome. I am so happy to be back and have the opportunity to talk to you. Thank you for being there so I have someone to talk to, and I really appreciate your comments. If you're new, I hope you find something here that's useful or fun. Let me see. We do have the first signs of spring here, although we've had some really cold weather. Off and on, it rains, it's cold. We had hail yesterday. We thought it was going to snow. It's been all over the map. And March did not go out like a lamb. It went out like a lion, really. But you can see signs of spring, and one is that the hellebores have started. So this is one of our first signs of spring. These are hellebores, also called Lenten roses, which is appropriate right now. And you can see there's all different types here, and they're just so much fun. And this one, I think this one's called Peppermint Ice. We get a lot of ours from a local nursery called Northwest Nursery, and it's here locally, and sometimes they have an open house. And so over the years, we've gotten quite a few and planted them in the garden. They're perennials. They come back every year and usually just look better than ever every year, bigger and better. Okay, I really don't have a finished object. This is a Sophie scarf that I showed you last time, and I made one for a friend recently. It was really fun. She has different colors that she likes compared to mine, and so I said, let's go through your yarn collection, and instead of picking out the natural colors I expected, she picked out a teal color, and it was really soft merino wool that I think had come from Italy. It was really great, and I had a good time knitting it, but I've given it to her, so it is not here to show you. I have mostly been working on my pressed flowers cardigan, and then I have this other project I want to talk to you about. And what I want to talk about overall is the issue of knitting bottom up versus top down. Not that this is the last word on it by any means. It's me just more kind of exploring the issue rather than having great words of wisdom, but we'll see what evolves as I talk. And anything you have to share, I would really love to hear. So mostly, I'm sure I've talked before about this, and as many people will say, I have tended to knit top-down sweaters more because I can, even at the very beginning, I can try it on, I can see how the neck's fitting. Then I join for sleeves, and then I can see how the whole yoke is fitting around my shoulders. And as I go along, I maybe can, after the underarms, add stitches to accommodate differences in size between my shoulders and my hips. So you've heard me say this many times before, and that is something I do over and over. But there are so many bottom-up sweaters that I hate to miss out on, and I don't want to get in the rut of always having to do the same thing. So I have knit 2 baby sweaters bottom up, a Tin Can Knits pattern called Dog Star. Worked out great for baby, but again, you're not really too worried about how the fit's going to be. It doesn't have to be. They don't care. They're very accepting. And but I tried about 3 or 4 years ago. I knit a vest that I'll talk to you about next, and it just didn't work out, and I had a very hard time because it was bottom up and seamed. So I want to talk about how I can learn to use a pattern like that and actually have it fit me. My goal here, even though I love the process of knitting, and I do really, sometimes I see a pattern and I think, oh, I want to see what that, I want to see how that works. I want to knit that. I want to see, can my needles do that design or texture or color work? But really, I want something to fit me. I want to be able to wear the garment that I've made. And it's partly because I have so much trouble finding clothes to fit me in real life, ready-made, that that is my goal. So, you know, there's successes and failures, but that is the ultimate goal here. So anyway, I am knitting right now the Pressed Flowers cardigan. I've talked to you about it a couple times before. It for me is really a joyful, addictive knit. It's by Amy Christophers of Savory Knitting, and it has just been a pleasure, partly because of the pattern and partly because of the yarn I've used. So I'm currently on Sleeve Island, and I have to say Sleeve Island is really daunting for me. It seems to be taking so long, and I think it's because I finished the body and I really felt like I was just going to be ripping out these sleeves, and it's just taken a lot longer than I thought. But anyway, here's the sweater, here's the sleeves, and here we have the wonderful pattern on the back. So it is, because it's a cardigan and it's not steeked, it's mosaic knitting. So you're only knitting with one color at a time. Every 2 rows you change colors. It is bottom up. So you start down at the ribbing, knit the ribbing, and head up, and then you get 2 flaps. You get a front flap and a back flap, and then you seam the shoulders together. So here's the issue I've run into. I had never done a drop down cardigan, a drop shoulder cardigan before. I've done raglan, circular, I've done a beautiful contiguous sleeve that I want to try again, but I hadn't tried drop shoulder, even though I have some ready-made sweaters with drop shoulder that really fit me beautifully. So I was intrigued to start this, and I have another drop shoulder pattern I'm looking into as well. But because of my inexperience, and maybe because I wasn't thinking about it that carefully, the pattern's really good, but she doesn't give you a lot of extra advice. She's giving you what you need, but she's not just putting in extra on that for the inexperienced bottom-up knitter. And so when I'm this is the right front right here, and as this is the this is where the armhole begins. And so when I was deciding how long to make the sweater, I was imagining that this was my underarm. And for most of the sweaters we do, if it were like a colorwork sweater and I was going up until I got to the yoke, join for sleeve, this would be, in most cases, the underarm. So right here. But this is a drop shoulder. So really, this is not the shoulder, this is the shoulder. And this right here is more like over here. So I'm going to show you, you've probably run into this before, but if you haven't, maybe you'll find this useful. And I'm going to get this on and demonstrate. Now, one thing I want to point out, if you've when you're in this position, I got to go to, sorry for the clinking of the needles here. I got to go to Youthful Fiber Farms open shop day in Halsey the weekend before last. It was so much fun. Got to talk to a whole bunch of people who were knitting and spinning. And I talked to a friend there about this sweater and talking about how I needed to do the seaming on the shoulders. And she strongly suggested that I block the sweater first. And so I did. And I am so happy I did. The seaming came together just really nice. I'm just super happy with it. And also the fabric really loosened up. I have hair all over me, or wool, who knows. And it just opened up really nicely and really gave me a better sense of how the sweater's going to go. But anyway, so that edge right here, as you can see, this is not the underarm. It is this, you can see better over here. Here's where you pick up for sleeves. And so it's really like this. So this is the underarm. And it's almost 2 inches away from that edge. So when I was measuring it, I was imagining that I was going to have a sweater that was going to be this much longer. Now, it's not cropped. It's definitely below my waist, which is here. And I'm going to be fine with it, but it was not quite what I was imagining in terms of length. So now I've had time to think about it and I'm okay with it for sure. And there was no way that I would go back, because even though I'm absolutely loving this project, I am finding it to be, it just isn't, I'm not whipping it out. I started this at the end of February and here I am at the beginning of April and working on it pretty diligently. And it really is taking a while. So it's all enjoyable, but for me, not fast. But you could go on Ravelry and find other people just whipping it out, no problem. So I'm trying not to compare myself to other people. I just seem to work at a certain speed. I do feel like my needles are clicking along pretty fast, but I'm just not fast. They don't come out that fast. Now the sleeves, so you can see this is where you pick up for sleeves right here. You see it a little better on this side, I think, right along here. And this has not been blocked. I kind of wish that I might have gone up a size for the sleeves and I didn't, but I think I think this fabric will loosen up just like this did, and I'm not worried about it. And it does fit. I'm not wearing this over a big heavy sweater. So the sleeves are they're completely straight. I think at one point there was a decrease. There's a couple rows where you just knit the dark color in between the flowers. So there's places where you can decrease, but up till now it's pretty straight. And then you get close to the cuff and do some decreasing. And at first I was worried because I was afraid it would be like almost bell-shaped at the bottom, but she has you decrease and then you go into a ribbed cuff, and I think I'll be comfortable with that. I don't really like having my sleeves hang. I was actually in a restaurant a couple weeks ago with a girlfriend, and the waitress was wearing, it's in a casual place, and the waitress was wearing a very baggy sweater or sweatshirt, and she had really, her sleeves were really just hanging. And at one point she was reaching for something and they like hung down. I was afraid they were going to get in the food. It was interesting. Anyway, I'm really happy with this. It has so far bottom up with this drop shoulder hat, aside from my issue of not knowing where to measure. It has been okay so far. So I think you just have to be aware of what the construction is and where things are going to be before you, as you go along. And so I'm trying to do that and be open. But in some ways, this was as much an issue of the construction being unfamiliar to me as much as the direction. But if I were knitting a top-down drop shoulder piece, I think it would be way more obvious to me. And obviously I would be able to just knit until I reached, it went as long as I wanted it to be. So anyway, if you have any special hints or issues with bottom-up construction, I'd really like to hear about it. I should tell you, just so you know, that the colors, the yarns I've used have been, the dark color is Lichen and Lace, Rustic Heather Sport in the coal colorway, and I'm now almost at the end of my Feederbrook Farm Entropy DK. This is the Event Horizon colorway, and then I've used that throughout, but for the last sleeve I also have a different colorway, Entropy Farm colorway. Here we go. And this one is the, well, I'm puzzled. It says Event Horizon. I didn't think it was. So maybe it is, but the ones I used 2 skeins of the Event Horizon, and they were much, much darker than this one. But I might be focusing more on these darker colors when I do the second sleeve. But anyway, oh my gosh, I absolutely love the fabric that this has made. 2 together. The Lichen and Lace is not soft. It's pretty rustic, but boy, when you put it with the Entropy, which is pretty soft, I really like it. It just makes a wonderful stretchy fabric. And after I blocked it, I was just thrilled. Also, one thing that's nice about the sweater is before you block it, it's all flat. So you can block it and lay it out, and it dries so fast because it's just one layer. And that was really fun to have it done so quickly. So anyway, it's really enjoyable. And oh, I just wanted to show you one more thing. The inside of this. So I don't know if this, I'm assuming the shawl pattern has the same, looks the same. And if so, that gives you an idea of what the pressed flowers shawl might look at on the other side. So we'll see. Anyway, that has been fun. Now, excuse me, I'm strangled here in yarn. So the other thing I wanted to tell you is that I think I mentioned last time that Dennis and I are going to Ireland in a couple weeks, and we are going for a month to go up and down the west coast of Ireland. And he's a citizen by ancestry, not birth, and has been there many times before, and we've wanted to go for a long time. We had plans in 2020, and that all had to be canceled, of course. And we go up, we don't do, usually, we haven't done tours except if we went someplace where you had to do a tour, but we'll go by ourselves, and we do Airbnb and find our way around. I have been looking into Irish yarn because I want to be prepared and informed in case I run into some. And I wanted to tell you, there are a couple things that I've run into, and this segues into my other project here. But I listened to Carol Feller has a brand new episode where she talks about Irish yarn and Irish mills. So if you're interested in yarn from Ireland, I highly recommend listening to that. Basically, Ireland lost a lot of its mills the same way the United States did, and probably other countries as well. And most of the yarn made there is probably about 50% wool grown in Ireland, and then the rest comes elsewhere. I noticed that Carol Feller herself, who produces yarn, has a new yarn called Blasta, and I think it has a higher percentage of Irish wool, and I would love to be able to see what she has. So I have a link to that that video, and I've also been listening to a podcast new to me called Fraoch Knits with Anya, and she's talked a little bit about yarn, and she lives in Mayo, County of Mayo, and she's talked a lot about how there isn't a lot of yarn available to her locally, but she will talk about yarns that are available, and she will say the same thing, that there's not a lot of yarn grown in Ireland, even though there's lots of sheep in Ireland. Same thing here. If I go up the freeway, I'll see sheep all along. Right now, the lambs are, you can see all the smaller little lammies out there, and it looks, but they're meat sheep, definitely. So anyway, I'm looking into places where I might be aware that whether or not there's a yarn store around. And we are hoping to go to County Donegal and go to the Studio Donegal and the Donegal factory. So I might have something to report from there. Okay, let me have a sip of my tea. I have my chai tea. It's the Blue Lotus chai tea with golden turmeric, and I have a shot of maple syrup in here. So I hope you have something yummy. And let me tell you, speaking of Ireland, I got to go to Ireland in 1999 when my kids were younger, and we weren't there for long. It was a pretty quick trip, and normally I'm not very good at the zoom in, zoom out. I mean, it's just very time consuming. By the time you figure out where you're supposed to be, there's not much time to relax, but still, it was great to go. We went to Dublin and then drove over to the west coast of Ireland, mostly the Galway area, went to the Cliffs of Moher. And in Galway, I bought myself a sweater. So I don't have the sweater anymore, and I looked for quite a while this morning trying to find a picture of the sweater, but I can't find it. I don't know what the heck I did with it, but here's the yarn from the sweater, okay? And it's kind of a Merlot. I don't know if you could see some of the colors. The light's pretty good right now. So I bought the sweater, and they didn't have my size and the color I wanted, so I paid for it and they mailed it to me. And it wasn't just the wool, which to me looks a lot like the Donegal tweed, but it also had a big shawl, big collar that was made out of chenille. And I was a little disappointed when I actually got the sweater because the chenille color was a putty color, and I was imagining it being the same color as the sweater. So, but I did wear it for years. It had big shoulder pads and it had voluminous sleeves. In fact, eventually I took it apart, mostly because I wasn't wearing it. A lot of it was because, you know, when the shoulder pads went out of style, they really went out of style with a bang. And the sleeves were so huge, and at the time that was no longer in fashion. As I was getting into knitting, and I opened my closet one day and looked at that sweater, which I never wore. I had paid quite a bit for it, so it was one of those things where it was always like, ugh, I feel so bad that I'm not really wearing that sweater. I never did wear it as much as it deserved. Partly that was me saving things. You know, I tend to, I would get something nice and save it for best and never wear it. I'm really trying to not do that anymore. If I have something beautiful, just wear it. Make it part of your wardrobe. But anyway, one day as I was getting more into the knitting, into knitting garments, I looked at it and went, wait, look at all that yarn. I love that yarn. I love the tweedy part. So I took it very laboriously. I took it apart. It's not actually that easy to take apart sweaters once they've been finished. The ends have been woven in and so forth. And I think some of this was machine made and some of it wasn't. But eventually I managed to salvage a lot of the yarn. And I ended up putting it into hanks. I washed it and I hung it to get all the curlies out. And I knit myself a sweater. So the sweater I made was Anna Vest by Karen Templer. So some of you may remember Karen Templer. She had a wonderful blog called Fringe Association, which I really enjoyed. And she also had a few patterns that she had on Ravelry. maple syrup. And it was a nice vest. It's a little bit, it's like the Burgos vest that I'm working on, that I've told you about many times, that I'm knitting out of this yarn, hand spun yarn. And it's taking me forever, so I'm not going to show it to you today. But it's like that. It's buttoned down in front. It has a V-neck. But the Anna vest also had an interesting texture to it. It was, unlike the Burgos vest, which is top down, the Anna vest was bottom up in pieces. So 3 pieces, to both the fronts and the back, and then you seam the sides, and then you seam the shoulders. And I don't know what I was doing. I was still somewhat new at knitting garments, so maybe I'll blame it on that. But it turned, once I seamed it together, it was at least a foot bigger than it should have been. It was huge on me. And I certainly had to know that before I put the button band on. But I must have just thought, oh, okay, it's a little bigger. Maybe I was feeling, I don't know, I might have felt self-conscious of my weight at that time. And I thought, oh, it'll just obscure things. I don't think that really works. And it's, you know, we should all just have clothes that fit us. But it was huge. And I'm so short that the oversized look makes me feel like I'm wearing my mother's dress-up clothes. So I love the look of it. I see other people and it looks elegant and so forth, but I don't feel comfortable in it. It's just a personal thing. Well, for quite a while, I did wear it. I held it with a shawl pin sometimes, but because the buttons didn't work at all, because it just like overlapped like this, really almost all the way over. It was ridiculous. And when you pull it like that, then it distorts the sleeves. So it's been sitting in my closet. So this poor yarn is really had a hard time finding its moment. So this week, while I wasn't working on the pressed flower shawl cardigan, I tore it up and I have a whole bag of this yarn. So I did a little swatch and it looks like it's something like, I'm on like size 6 needles and I'm coming out with something like 4 stitches to an inch, maybe 4.5 to an inch. So I'm looking for patterns that'll work. And the Burgos vest is a possibility. And I think this yarn will be enjoyable and easy to knit with. It's not, you might not want to make a Sophie shawl, scarf out of it, because to me, in my hands, it doesn't feel scratchy, but up here, maybe this doesn't bother me particularly, but I could imagine some people might not care for it up close to their skin. You can see, like there's some, can you see the little, like there's some turquoise in here. There's some pinks and it's just really, and this is how curly it is because I haven't done anything. I haven't washed it. I'm not sure if I am going to wash it this time, but I might. I'm knitting with it, and you can see I'm knitting in the round, although maybe I shouldn't. I was thinking also, I guess I did the swatch in the round because I also looked at Thea Colman's Pousse Cafe vest, but that is bottom up. So, but I'm thinking maybe it's time to just jump into some bottom-up sweaters. So that one would be fun because I have found some yarn in my wool pantry that it complements that Merlot tweed really nicely and just makes it a tiny bit brighter. So maybe I might do that one. So anyway, that is what I am looking at so far. One reason I wanted to take that vest apart is that it just killed me that I had this wonderful yarn. I don't know if it's Donegal tweed, but it's definitely just a nice tweedy yarn that does look very similar to the Donegal tweed I've seen here in the States. I can get a hold of it. There's soft Donegal in Silverton, which is an hour and a half away. So I just felt like I have this yarn, and even though I would love to support Irish businesses, and I'm sure I will, I really wanted to use the yarn I already had. So I'm hoping to at least cast it on before I go. So we'll see. Okay. One of the things that I've been thinking about, because this trip is coming up and I've spent as much time thinking about what projects I'll be bringing to work on as I have thought about the clothes I'm bringing. We travel almost always, we just travel with a carry-on suitcase and I'll carry something bigger, either a small backpack or a tote bag. I usually use something like a tote bag that fits over my shoulder, that I can put a sweater and a book and some, things in to go to tour around. But this trip will be outside more than most places we visited recently. And I'm imagining us doing more hiking. So I might bring a small backpack because I think there will be more outdoor hiking and it might be more comfortable to have the backpack. But at any rate, I'm traveling with a very small amount of clothing, and usually it amounts to maybe 2 short sleeve sweaters, 2 long sleeve sweaters, 2 short sleeve shirts, 2 long sleeve shirts, a sweater, 1 or 2 sweaters, my raincoat. I have to do layers. It's just pretty tight. The shawls take up so much space, so that's unsure. I'd like to bring this one, which is a very woolly shawl that I've talked to you about before, that I kind of made a mashup of. But it's, it's pretty heavy yarn, and so I don't know, maybe if I wore it on the plane, it wouldn't matter. We're renting a car the whole time, so as soon as we get into the car, everything could just explode out of the suitcase. And then I could bring an extra bag to check on the way home. But usually we don't check bags because we want to make sure that we arrive where we're going with all our stuff, such as it is. So anyway, I'm looking at some different patterns and thinking of what would be good to knit on. So one thing, I've thought about doing a shawl. The last time I talked to you about travel knitting, which I think was this summer, maybe in May or June, I talked to you about a trip we took, and a fingering weight shawl is really a great thing to work on. There's enough to keep you busy. Fingering weight gives you plenty of yardage for the amount of space it's taking up. So that is appealing. And I have thought, I never did make the Sommernacht shawl that I intended to make last summer, so there's that. And that calls for a light fingering weight, and I do have several options for that. Do I have another picture of it? It's, where'd it go? It's Sommernacht by Evgeniya Dupliy. And there's some other pictures. So I always find that feather and fan type design really satisfying, and so I have some things I could make with that. Some of the yarn, I haven't used this yarn, and I have really been thinking of it. This is yarn grown local to me. It's the sheep or Shetland sheep. They're grown about half an hour away from me at a farm called Sword Farm, Shetland wool, reared and sheared in Oregon. And Nancy at Sword Farm sells at Lane County Farmers Market, and I just love it. It is incredibly sheepy. I've showed it to you, I'm sure, last summer. So I have quite a bit of both of these colors. This is from a sheep named Aspen, and this is from Teasel. And I also have this is Indigo and Violet, a mother-daughter duo. And I was thinking that it could be very fun to be working on yarn from Oregon while I'm in Ireland. So that's one thought. I could do the Sommernacht shawl, which was in Lina summer 2022. I could do that with some color changing. So that's one possibility. I also looked into, I have the Shetland Trader, and I haven't made anything out of it. She has two shawls in here. One is called Vatna. And there's that. And then a smaller version. And also a much thinner version. Wait a minute, is that another? No. Oh. Is this one. So I wouldn't have as much color to bring in there. So you can see how narrow it is. So I don't know about, so we'll think about that. I'm also very tempted to bring in a little bit of a color because, as you know, this isn't usually where I'm going. I'm usually looking for some color. So I do have other Shetland wool in my wool pantry, and I could maybe just have a little bit of the color at the end, just because I like color. I still have my Nutiden, but I just don't think that I can be working on this while traveling. So this is something to look forward to, maybe a summer treat for me is all. It's not very summery, but it'll be a fun thing to look forward to. So there's that in the future. Let's see, the other thing, what else have I been looking at? Okay, last fall I've been trying to knit, as you know, I've been trying to avoid nylon. I'm trying to avoid polyester, plastics. I'm trying to do natural fibers as much as possible. But last fall, when I was watching the Woolly Thistle podcast, I just really wanted to make some socks out of something self-striping or self-patterning yarn. And if you know of any yarns that are not that don't have nylon, that would be appropriate for socks, And I think there we're looking at something either with some mohair in it or maybe with a nice good twist to it that would work for socks, but also has these color changes. Let me know. I know I could knit alternating colors, but I have so much trouble with socks anyway that I wanted to get something that I could just watch the colors spool out on their own. And so anyway, that's my big, long excuse. And I don't really need an excuse. We're already really far away from fast fashion by doing our own, knitting our own clothes. But still, I am looking for non-nylon. But yet, despite that, bought 2 skeins of the West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply, and this one is the Winter Icicle. And I thought that would be a really fun summer sock. And the other one I got, also West Yorkshire Spinners, is the Mallard colorway. So I'm assuming this is a pattern. It's really funny because in this light, it's more, when I'm looking at it, it's way more green and blue, almost purpley blue, and some almost like a burgundy. But when I hold it up to you, all I see is the white. Isn't that funny? White really screams to me. It really just, whenever you see white, it just shouts out, and I'm very cautious about knitting with mixing white into like stranded colorwork patterns and stuff. And almost always I'll pick something like a light gray, and it still looks white. So funny. I don't know. What do you think about that? So anyway, those are my possible travel thoughts. I could also, I have this memorized. I could do a scarf or a shawl if I ended up finding some yarn and running out of things to knit. I don't think so. I don't knit. I'll probably only take one of these. I'll probably take this one because I'll need color. And especially if I bring this one, these natural colors. So I'm going to need color some days. On the days I need to knit myself calm or something. Anyway, I think I am running to the end of this. I have a few more things to talk about, and then I'll wrap it up. Oh, I'm looking at the time. Okay, I'm taking longer than I thought. I did, this fall, I signed up for a Kate Davies all over club. And it was a club where there was going to be stranded all over color work. So every project was going to have a big amount of color work in it. And then you'd get, in your email, you'd get a new pattern, and it would go straight to your Ravelry. It was very affordable, and I got it, and I was enjoying the patterns, but they were all the smaller items, and I didn't want to make those. I was waiting for the garments, and then by the time the garments came along, my shoulder was all inflamed, and then I didn't get to knit for a while, and so forth. But anyway, at the end of the club, she sends the book, and the book just arrived, so here it is. And there's some really fun things. The first thing I saw when I almost made was the, let's see if I can I find these things, or will I just be aimlessly looking? Okay, there's a hot water bottle. I love it. And I've wanted to make a colorwork vest and steeped, and there's Kate in her vest. It's called Starn Keeper. And there's a sweater that I'm most drawn to, and I suspect one reason I am is because of the colors are more my favorites. I really do like that one. And then I'm trying to show this to you without revealing the charts, but there you go. There is that pattern. So that is really appealing to me. There's also there's several other sweaters that are a lot of all over color work. There's that one called Skifty. And this one. So I really have, now see this one? For me, I have to think of a replacement for that yellow. I'm just not going to wear yellow. And so anyway, these patterns haven't quite, I haven't thought of what colors I'd be using that I really like. So some of mine are some of the colors I'm thinking of are just going to be very different. And usually I don't have too much trouble thinking of those, but when I get into a lot of complicated colors, it can be really tricky. So anyway, and that was another one I'm attracted to, and that's a DK weight. It's called Cove. And the one I was just showing you is Shane, I think. Shen. Anyway, very fun, and you can go on Ravelry and see those patterns now. So I think that's about it. I just want to tell you about, I think I might have mentioned last time a book I was reading. It was a big, fat book called The Love Songs of W.E.B. Dubois by Honoree Jeffers. I've finished it. It's about 800 pages, which is daunting, but I loved it. It is an epic story about a family, and it talks about, it goes way back in time, and there's charts of the family tree at the beginning of the book, and then there's a story all the way along through a thread all the way through the book talking about a woman in current day. And it is just so interesting how the history of her family intertwines with her own lived experience today. And I really enjoyed it. Many characters you're attached to, fascinating history of Native Americans and African Americans intertwining in their history, which I didn't think or know much about. And it is very interesting, so I highly recommend it. I might have mentioned it last time, but now I'm completely finished, and I really want to suggest that one. And I think that's about it. I'm going to wrap it up before I just start fading and blathering. So I could talk to you all day. I really enjoy doing this. I'm so happy that you're here and interested in watching. And I love to hear your comments. Tell me what you're knitting, what you're working on, or any thoughts you might have about what you're seeing in the knitting world. So thank you so much, and take care of yourselves, and happy knitting.